Yeah, so this is lugworm digging the other day, and ever so windy, but it's something which needs to be done if you want fresh bait. Yeah, this is we're just rigging up on this concrete sea defence. It's pretty handy, really. When the tide's sort of a fair way up, you can sort of get on it and you can get started a bit earlier. Um, yeah, it's just an unusual place to fish, but it can can be alright. It's a little bit tricky to cast on there, but yeah, it's a good little spot. Yeah, so this is the Paternoster rig, um, and yeah, just fishing one hook, one small hook, and sometimes that's just a bit easier to keep it simple. Yeah, so I'm just explaining here that this is that's a lead lift clip, and on this particular lead, it's a grapnel. There's a little device there. You can see the little hook. You can put your hook in there, and it keeps your rig a bit more streamlined. And when it hits the water, you can see those little grooves. It will release. Yeah, you can see that it's a little bit tight for casting there. Yeah, I like to fish with a multiplier and a fixed spool. Yeah, that's what I always have done. I always start my session with a bit of bait conservation. I usually turn up a bit early, so therefore I don't want to go full pelt. And if I've got some good bait, I want to try and preserve it for what I believe would be the best part of the tide. Yeah, there's plenty of whiting still about. There was a report online with one of the forums. One of the charter skippers was saying that he didn't think the cod would be that far behind. So it's always go to the forums to try and get some information, get some clues on where and when to fish. Yeah, my trusty old Shakespeare tackle box there. I mean, that's got to be 15 years old though. And they are relatively expensive. They're like 40, 50 quid, but their plastic is really well made. And I just think it's worth buying a decent one. Then it's going to last you a lot longer. Yeah, I always try and warm up slowly with my casting. I don't go full pelt straight away because I don't want to break anything. I don't want to break any legs. I don't want to break my bag or pull a muscle or something. So I always do just get out fishing for a start, and then sort of as you warm up, then sort of start giving a bit more welly. Put your gear under a bit more pressure. Yeah, there's a nice southwesterly wind, quite strong over the shoulder. Brilliant for casting. Gets behind your gear. You ain't got to try so hard, and that'll still go miles. And they're really good conditions. But sometimes they're not that good. Not as good as it could be for fishing. So there's advantages and disadvantages of having the wind with you. Yeah, I always try and cast in a way so my lines, if I'm fishing two rods, so they don't cross over. So let's say this is the right rod and the left rod, and I'll always try and walk to the left and cast there. And if I'm fishing with the right rod, I always try and, especially at night time, it's important to keep your gear separate because you don't want to wind your gear in, especially when you've spent a bit of time casting it out with some fresh bait on and stuff like that, and that can happen. Sometimes you'll find your gear will be fishing right alongside each other. It must be within a metre of it. Do you know what I'm saying? So in order to mitigate that, you can literally just say, right, well, with one of the rods I'm going to walk this way and cast, and with the other rods I'm going to walk that way, instead of sort of trying to walk to the same spot and then cast. Yeah, so the tackle box got my bait in there, my tripod, I've got the lantern. Got all my stuff in there. It's good. You can literally put all your stuff in there. It's a good asset. Yeah, when retrieving on the multiplier, it's important to guide the line back in with your thumb. That way you've got a nice level spool for when you cast. It's just one of the flounders I picked up there. If I wasn't using small hooks, you'd struggle to get them on the hook like that. So it's imperative that you actually have some small hooks to target these kind of fish. But your small hooks will pick up a big fish as well. So don't be scared off from using small hooks. Yeah, flounders virtually always gut hook themselves, so you're going to need to use those pliers just to get the hook, and you want to put your pliers on, try and find some part of the hook, and then literally just rotate it, and that's the best way to try and get the hook out. You don't want to be having to snip off and keep tying on and losing hooks. They're quite expensive. And it's a time thing as well. Yeah, I don't really feel the need to use two hooks when you when you're tying up your rig. You just have one single hook, and generally I like to use a big bait, so I don't even with a small hook I put on quite a few lugworm, to get a good scent trail. Yeah, you just want to be mindful of other people's dogs, which they haven't put on the leads and stuff. I've had situations where the dog has eaten my lugworm. I've had situations where a dog has even started to eat a trace with a load of hooks in it. So I'm just saying that you want to keep your stuff inside your your plastic tackle box or something which is zipped up. Even sometimes if you've got your hooks high up, they will jump up and all sorts, because a lot of dog owners don't really understand any of the dangers associated with beach fishing to their pets or even to themselves. So you just got to just keep an eye out for owners who got their dogs off their leads. Yeah, this is a dab, and the difference between a flounder and a dab is that this one's got a rough back. When you put your finger on its back towards its head, it's rough there, where the flounder is completely smooth. And they're a little bit dirtier looking, a little bit slender, not so oval. And you can see he's got a little bit of sort of skin coloration underneath as well. But that's actually a dab. I don't know what is the best eating between the two. I'd imagine they'd be pretty similar. But yeah, just a prime example of if you use small hooks, that you can pick up one or two different species which are there, otherwise you'd miss them. Yeah, so we're going to recast now, and obviously your grip wires, you want to make sure you sort of bend them back into position. As you can see, for a small hook there's quite a big bait on there. I don't really feel you need to use the Pinnell rig, just as one single hook usually gets them. So yeah, obviously this is low tide at this stage, and a bit of a bank has started to form, which has been a bit of a nuisance. So I've had to move to a different end of the beach where there's a bit more of a channel, a bit more depth. Yeah, I don't usually like to move up stations on a particular beach in a peg, but sometimes you just have to, especially when it's quite shallow at low tide. Yeah, so the light's starting to go a bit now, and another flounder's come on the feed. We had about 4 this session. They weren't huge, but it's nice to get them different to whiting. Obviously, there's loads and loads of whiting around at the minute, and they comes a little bit boring after a while. But it'd be nice to get a few more codlin coming on the feed. But the trouble is, the water's just a bit too warm at the minute. If anything, we were hoping for a bass, but it didn't. They didn't show. But just getting some flatfish is nice because they are quite unique fish. And like I say, you've got to use your small hooks to get these. And obviously the wires have all bent out there. But the grapnel is a very good lead for holding in some strong tides. But yeah, there's obviously a lead lift above it, which helps to get it up high in the water. But yeah, flatfish do generally gut hook themselves. They really do, eat their food. A couple of them died, so I kept them. I did gut them, obviously, and I found a crab claw inside. So he obviously had hold of a crab and ripped off his arm. You see these crabs walking around with one arm, and that's how it happens. So yeah, we're just pelting it out again there. We're using the South African cast. I've always used that because I generally get more distance with that. And the pendulum cast, you need some really good timing for that. And I just find it's just simpler and more effective. It's whatever suits you the most, really. And that's the technique to hone. But I find you don't really, when the fish are biting, you don't really need distance. It's more to do with making sure you've got the right, doing the basics well, and you've got the right bait on, and you're getting a reasonable way out there. Disadvantages are really whacking it. Sometimes if your bait's a little bit old, it'll go flying off the hook and you end up fishing with no bait. So it's very important that you fish with you've got some bait on your hook. That's the key thing. Yeah, another whiting, another pin whiting, slightly larger than some of them, but they were particularly quite small on this day. Yeah, another tip, I use a thermos sort of cooler bag, lunch bag thing to put my lugworm in, and I put a freezer block underneath it, underneath the bait, with a bit of plastic over the top, so that the lugworm obviously doesn't get wet. You want to keep your lugworm well away from fresh water. But I find that if you can keep them nice and cold, that your lugworm will last longer. So you don't want to expose them to any sort of warm air or anything. Try and keep them nice and cold. I'm not sure what I'm rabbiting on about here, but sure I'm waffling on about something. I think I'm talking a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of using braid over mono. And all I'm saying is that braid, from my experience, has been a complete waste of time for surf casting. A, because it bounces out of the seabed when the tide and the waves, the breakers smack into it, and you find your lead sinker and your rig starts bouncing around, as where the old school 15, 18, 20 pound mono, it's got a lot of stretch in it, and your lead sinker just grips in, and it can survive some stains, can stay in the seabed with some big tides and some quite rough weather. And it's cheaper to use mono as well. Not quite so good bite detection, but braid is just too temperamental. It just sort of, just your gear keeps breaking out at the bottom. For me, it's just a complete waste of time to even use it. You do hear some people talking it up online, and even tackle dealers will tell you anything because it is quite expensive and they'll want you to buy it. But yeah, there's some people online who just sort of promote it, and that's a load of rubbish for surf casting. So, just thought I'd put in your mind. I've been surf casting for 25 years. So I'm just giving you my thoughts. That's all. yeah, so we're just sort of pinging it out there again, and yeah, it's important when you cast not to sort of overdo it. You can strain your back a little bit, you try and get some more distance. At the end of the day, as long as you've got your technique right, you'll be like 5 yards over or less. Do you know what I'm saying? It don't really matter. It's not worth sort of twinging your back over, so to speak. So you want to sort of, and again, it's not always about distance catching the fish. Yeah, so the sun's starting to go down a bit now. It's very white and about. I think the tide is actually starting to come in, and I'm giving it a little bit of a happy Mondays little dance there. So yeah, the tide's coming in. The lights on. I've got a plan to fish in the dark for an hour or two, just to see what's going on before the tide sort of cuts me off and getting back to the car. So I can't stay for the full flood, but as the tide turned, there was 1 or 2 dabs. Flounders were there, but once you caught enough of them, you caught some white, and the water's too warm for the codlin. It ain't really worth sort of staying out all night. Do you know what I'm saying? If you were catching one codlin after the other, you'd just stay till you're blue in the face. But yeah, I mean, when it starts to get dark, I generally make sure I've got a sort of the tide is flooding. So I generally sort of retreat back up the beach because the tide does come in very, very fast. I don't want to keep moving my gear all the time, so I generally sort of go right the way back and would rather walk down. But you find that the tide soon catches up with you anyway. You're doing that strategy. Yeah, so there's a little bit of weed sort of coming in on the flood, and I think whitens again. And and obviously bait management is key, but we really did have loads of bait, and I actually chucked some back at the end because I had so much. But it's always good to have plenty of bait. But I would really recommend that when you bait up, put as much as you can on. But you've got to bear in mind that depending on how long you've got to stay, you always got to make sure you've got some. But yeah, you just got to make sure you have enough on the hook. But I always like to whack out a fairly big bait, even fishing small hooks. There was actually a few crabs out there, but that wasn't horrendous. Sometimes you retrieve your gear and the hooks are there, with either prawns or crabs just nibbling at it.
Just where those breakers are though, a bit better.
Yeah, as you see on my salopettes there, you can see all these mud stains on it. I actually, to get to this spot, I have to go down a cliff, and that had been raining. And as I say, with carrying all the gear, especially with the tackle box, it's quite heavy. So you find as you're going down the cliff, you can be sort of destabilised from carrying a lot of weight. Anyway, cut a long story short, skidded up on my ass, and nearly went over 2 or 3 times. And I suppose a lot of people in that situation would say, bugger it, it wasn't worth going down there. But when you get halfway down, you haven't really got a lot of choice. But it was difficult going back up, but it was easier. You see a nice little bit of ragworm tipped off there on the hook, nice chunky bit of white rag. I got the other day. So yeah, it is always good to go to easy spots where you can park the car and just fish out in front. Yeah, I like that. When there's plenty of fish around, what you want, yes. But when you're struggling to get what you want, I find you have to go to one or two, less fished spots to, to get some fish. And unfortunately, you can get you end up skidding up on your backside down to get to the spot. But that's the way it is sometimes.
This gap here is like a channel, main channel. There's no breakers there at all. Deeper water. So it's just 100 yards along here. We're just going to cast our gear that sort of way. I don't like to move, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah, so we've just cast it out there, tide's coming in, and we're just paying out the line until we get back to the tripod. £20 line I'm using on that one, which just does restrict the casting a little bit. £12 and £15 would be better. However, if you go into a snag with £12, you really do run the risk of losing your gear. And obviously it's dark now, so I'm just harping on about bait management and this and that and the other. We didn't really stay much longer in the dark, maybe an hour and a half, something like that. The fishing was just the same. But I always like just to sort of, depends what the time is like, I always like to give it a little go in the dark, just to sort of, to see if anything else springs a surprise. No, it sort of followed the same vein as what I sort of expected. It's a lot more difficult when it gets dark, and I always find it's pretty daft to turn up and rig up in the dark. There's something about being there a couple of hours before it gets dark, or an hour before it gets dark, rigging up and having a few casts before it gets dark. You just get your bearings and you get a little feel for what's going on. Because when it gets dark, it becomes everything becomes really difficult. Casting is twice as hard, even if you've been doing it for years. I like to get a real good feel for a place before in daylight. Before I do a night session, but this little short night session was easy. It was just a nice little bit of time, but the fishing was just the same, and wasn't really any point in staying. But that's I had an hour or two, so I just thought, well, why not? You never know, something might turn up. I always quite like fishing in the dark. I've had some of my better fish in the dark over the years, I'll be brutally honest. It's a good sort of, especially if you've got a limited amount of time to go fishing, where you're restricted to like a weekend. Well, if you become reasonably good at night fishing, then you create some more time for yourself. And I suppose that's how it's developed for me over the years, really. You can fish a good part of the tide over a weekend, and you can sort of get away with it, and you might run in with a few fish.
Watch now that the cast at night slips. Sometimes just being here at night, there's certain fish turn up, and just having it out half as good as we have during the day. Boom.
Yeah, so sort of come towards the end of the video now. Again, just another white. There's these fish like this where you're just like, oh, I'm gonna go on now. Even though I've got some bait, it's just the same. I probably had 20 whiting. This is me the day before digging some bait in a little snooper boat. I probably had 20 white, and I had about 4 flounders, and I had a couple of dabs. In about 6 hours. Enjoyable session, but the water's just too warm for the continent at the minute where I live. And we're just sort of here. We're just having a little wander around the marshes, just where I dig the bait. And I just couldn't get over the fact how clear the water was, just in there. I'm thinking, well, It's November. The bass are still there because of the water temperature. And I'm just like thinking, well, I wonder if there's any lurking in there. I'm sure there is. There's probably some sea trout in there as well. Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and more videos come along the way. And please subscribe. Okay, see ya.